The sun gleamed against the towering glass facade of the Crestview Hotel, its sleek, modern architecture standing proudly among the older, historic buildings surrounding it. Simone Turner, a black woman in her late 30s, stepped out of a luxury sedan with an air of poise and quiet confidence. Dressed in a meticulously tailored suit, her presence alone commanded respect. Simone had spent years building her real estate business from the ground up, transforming it into a billion-dollar empire. Today, she was supposed to relax and enjoy the fruits of her hard work. But the moment her heels clicked on the pavement, a familiar weight settled in her chest. Her assistant, Renee Lawson, followed close behind, carrying their luggage. Renee, sharp-eyed and meticulous, had confirmed their reservation weeks ago. She was more than an assistant. She was Simone's trusted right hand, someone who had been with her from the days when they could barely afford office space to now, where Simone stood as the head of a vast enterprise. But despite all she'd achieved, Simone couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The Crestview was known for catering to the world's elite, and Simone had undoubtedly earned her place among them. Yet even here she felt a lingering question gnawing at her. Would they recognize her success, or only see the color of her skin? "All set, right?" Simone asked, glancing at Renee as they walked toward the grand entrance. "Absolutely," Renee replied with a confident smile. "I triple-checked. You're their VIP guest for the week." Simone managed a small smile, grateful for Renee's thoroughness. But the tension in her chest didn't lift. As they entered the lobby, the grandeur was undeniable. High ceilings, glittering chandeliers, and the soft strains of classical music evoked an air of old-world luxury. Yet, the curious and lingering gazes that followed Simone's every step felt anything but welcoming. "Good afternoon," greeted the receptionist with a polite but noticeably cold tone. Her eyes flicked over Simone's face, an almost imperceptible discomfort flashing across her features. "How may I assist you?" "We have a reservation under Turner." "Simone Turner," Renee stated, her voice steady and confident. The receptionist hesitated, her fingers gliding over the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "One moment, please," she muttered, casting another fleeting glance at Simone. After a few seconds, her brow furrowed, and she looked up, her posture stiffening. "I'm not seeing a reservation under that name." Simone felt her stomach drop, though she kept her expression neutral. She'd faced this kind of subtle resistance her entire life, the mix-ups, the delays, the sudden issues with availability. But she was no longer the young woman who once wilted under such dismissive glances. She had built her resilience, along with her empire. "I confirmed the reservation myself," Renee interjected firmly, her tone professional but laced with an edge of irritation. "Please check again." The receptionist shifted uncomfortably, glancing away before picking up the phone. Her voice dropped to a whisper as she called over her manager. Moments later, a tall man with silver hair in a crisp, immaculate suit approached, his expression carefully cordial. "Good afternoon, I'm Mark Dalton, the manager," he said, his voice smooth yet guarded. "I understand there's an issue with your reservation." Simone met his gaze, sensing what was coming from the stiffness in his stance and the hesitance in his smile. The hotel manager, Derek Vaughn, stepped forward, his expression a mix of cordiality and a certain guarded formality. "Good afternoon, I'm Derek Vaughn, the manager here. I understand there's been an issue with your reservation," he said smoothly, though his voice had an undercurrent of forced politeness. Simone Turner held his gaze, sensing the familiar tone before he even continued. His carefully measured smile and stiff stance told her everything. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding," Vaughn said, letting his words hang in the air. "Unfortunately, we won't be able to accommodate you today. All of our suites are fully booked." Renee's eyes widened in shock. "That's impossible. We confirmed this reservation weeks ago." She turned to Simone, her voice filled with disbelief. But Simone, having been in this position before, simply raised a hand, gently quieting her assistant. She didn't need to hear the excuses. She'd encountered too many similar misunderstandings over the years. This wasn't about a booking error or a full hotel. It was about who she was, what she looked like. A polite smile curved on Simone's lips, though her eyes held a steely edge. "I understand," she replied, her voice calm and steady. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Vaughn. I'll make other arrangements." Vaughn seemed momentarily taken aback by her composed response. Perhaps he had anticipated an argument, but Simone simply turned on her heel, her head held high as she walked out of the lobby with quiet dignity. Renee hurried to keep up, her face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous, Simone," Renee exclaimed as they exited the hotel. "You can't just let them treat you like this. We should go to the press or call a lawyer something." Simone paused, taking a deep breath before facing her assistant. "Renee, I've fought battles like this my whole life. Do you think this is the first time I've been denied something because of my skin color?" Renee's anger softened into a mix of sadness and frustration. "But you shouldn't have to keep fighting, Simone. You've earned everything you have. You deserve respect." Simone sighed, feeling the weight of Renee's words and the familiar exhaustion that crept in with these moments. "I know, Renee, but that's why I can't fight them the way they want. They want me to get angry, to make a scene, to give them a spectacle. I won't give them that satisfaction." Renee nodded, though a hint of frustration lingered in her expression. "So what now?" A determined glint appeared in Simone's eyes. "Now," she said, "we regroup. Let's find another hotel for tonight, and then I have other plans for Crestview." Later that evening, Simone sat in a modest but welcoming hotel room overlooking the city skyline. The sting of Crestview's rejection was still fresh, but as she gazed out at the city lights, an idea began to take shape in her mind. She had spent her life breaking down barriers, proving her worth in spaces that had tried to keep her out. This situation wouldn't be any different. Crestview had refused to host her, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. Simone Turner didn't back down easily, and she wasn't one to settle for second best. If they wouldn't accept her as a guest, she'd return as something else entirely. A quiet smile spread across her face as the spark of a plan ignited. "Well, let's see how they feel," she thought, "when I'm the one signing their paychecks." The following morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains of Simone's modest hotel room, casting a soft glow over the space. She was already up, coffee in hand, her mind racing with possibilities and the beginnings of a strategy. Crestview might have turned her away, but they had inadvertently opened a door for her. A door that she intended to walk through with purpose and resolve. Simone's mind buzzed with possibilities as she sat at the small desk in her suite, nursing a cup of coffee. The Crestview's rejection was still fresh in her memory, but instead of letting it eat at her, she channeled the sting into purpose. Her laptop screen displayed a detailed spreadsheet of Crestview's assets and ownership structure. Simone was no stranger to high-stakes business acquisitions, and this was about to be her next one. The Crestview was owned by an elite investment group, a coalition that prided itself on catering to society's most exclusive members. However, beneath the luxurious facade, Simone knew the hotel's finances weren't as pristine as its image. The hotel had been quietly losing money for years, cutting corners to preserve its image despite increasing financial strains. This was information Simone had carefully gathered over the past months as she scouted properties for her own real estate portfolio, with Crestview already on her radar. What had started as a simple business opportunity was now something much more personal. Renee stepped into the room, still visibly frustrated from the previous day's events. "You're up early," she remarked, glancing over the documents and spreadsheets spread across the desk. "Are you really going through with this?" Without looking up, Simone responded, "Yes, Crestview needs new leadership, and I intend to give it to them." Renee folded her arms, a smirk tugging at her lips. "So you're just going to swoop in and buy the hotel out from under them?" "Not exactly," Simone replied, finally meeting Renee's gaze. "It's a little more complex. The Crestview is owned by a group of investors, but they've been struggling to keep it afloat. I've studied their financials. They've had to cut corners just to keep up appearances. Outwardly, they're thriving, but the foundation is crumbling. This isn't just an opportunity. It's a perfect time to buy." "So, you're planning to buy them out while they're vulnerable," Renee said, a look of admiration softening her initial frustration. Simone nodded. "That's right. I have the resources, but I'll need a carefully crafted strategy." Renee leaned against the desk, her earlier anger fading into respect, and even a bit of awe. "You always have a plan, don't you?" Simone smiled, a quiet confidence in her eyes. I didn't get here by accident, Renee. Renee chuckled, shaking her head in disbelief. I don't know how you do it. After what happened yesterday, I would have wanted to burn that place to the ground. That's why I'm me, Simone replied with a gentle yet firm tone. And that's why I've never let moments like this break me. I learned long ago that reacting in anger doesn't change anything. But buying the very hotel that turned me away? Now that changes everything. Renee sat down across from her, a spark of excitement in her eyes. All right, so what's the next move? Simone's fingers danced across her keyboard as she pulled up a list of Crestview's stakeholders. The investment group that owns Crestview has several partners. Most of them are silent investors, but a few have direct control over the decisions. I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse. Renee raised an eyebrow. And if they don't take the offer? They will, Simone replied confidently. Simone knew the Crestview's financial position was shakier than it appeared. A few more bad quarters, and they'd have no choice but to sell. But she didn't plan on waiting for that to happen. I'll offer them a generous price, she told Renee. More than they'd get from anyone else. When they see what I'm willing to pay, they'll take the deal. Renee nodded slowly, taking in the enormity of Simone's plan. This is massive, she said, a mixture of awe and excitement in her eyes. Simone's lips curved into a smile. It is, but it's also necessary. The Crestview stands for everything I've fought against my entire life. Exclusion, elitism, narrow-mindedness. I've worked too hard to be shut out of places like that. Renee let the words sink in, absorbing the weight of Simone's conviction. Do you think they'll ever realize who you are? That you're the same woman they turned away? Simone leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing slightly. No, she replied calmly. But by the time they figure it out, it'll be too late. The following weeks were a flurry of confidential meetings, negotiations, and quiet inquiries. Simone moved with precision, carefully keeping her interest in the Crestview under wraps. She brought on a few trusted advisors, using her extensive network to make discreet connections with the hotel's investors through intermediaries. Soon enough, word spread quietly among the Crestview board members. An anonymous but serious buyer with deep pockets and a vision for the hotel's future was interested. Not a single one of them suspected it was Simone Turner, and she intended to keep it that way until every contract was signed. Behind the scenes, Simone's legal team worked tirelessly, drafting acquisition documents and meticulously reviewing each clause. She left nothing to chance, ensuring that once the Crestview was hers, she'd have full authority over its operations. No more hidden prejudices or discriminatory standards. Every detail was planned to guarantee a future where everyone felt welcome. Meanwhile, Renee managed the day-to-day of Simone's real estate empire, keeping the rest of the business running smoothly as Simone dedicated herself to the takeover. Each night, Renee would report back with updates, and Simone would brief her on the progress with a steady confidence. They're getting nervous, Simone observed one evening over dinner in their temporary office. The investors are a lot less confident than they were a few months ago. They're ready to bite. Renee grinned, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. That manager is going to lose his mind when he finds out who the new owner is. Simone's smile was calm, her expression steady. Oh, he'll find out soon enough. 2 weeks later, the final meeting arrived. Simone sat at a long mahogany table in a private conference room, her legal team on either side of her. Across the table sat the Crestview's investors, their faces tense with anticipation. They didn't know her by sight, only by reputation and the vision her intermediaries had presented. Simone had kept her identity carefully hidden, allowing her representatives to handle every preliminary discussion and negotiation. But now, as the final contracts lay before her, she felt a quiet satisfaction swell within. She had played the game carefully, maneuvering through the complex web of negotiations with precision and patience. And now, it was time for the final move. One of the lead investors, a man named Richard Crane, cleared his throat as he looked down at the contract. Miss Turner, I must say your offer is unexpectedly generous, he began, glancing around the table. We weren't quite sure what to make of it at first, but after reviewing all the details, I think we're ready to move forward. Simone gave a small nod, her expression composed. I'm pleased to hear that, Mr. Crane. I've always believed in creating deals that benefit both sides. He forced a smile, though a hint of uncertainty lingered in his eyes. I do have to ask, though, why Crestview? A hotel like this is prestigious, yes, but we've had other offers in the past and none nearly as high. Simone folded her hands on the table, her gaze steady. Let's just say Crestview holds a personal significance for me. The investors exchanged puzzled glances but chose not to press further. They had no idea what Simone had experienced in their hotel just a few weeks prior. They didn't know she was the same woman who had been denied at the front desk, who had walked out of the lobby with her head held high after being told she didn't meet their standards. As the contracts were signed, Simone felt the weight of the moment settle over her. The hotel was now hers. Every inch of the Crestview belonged to her. And soon, everyone within its walls would understand that change was on its way. When the final signature was in place, Simone stood and extended her hand to Mr. Crane. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Crane. I look forward to leading Crestview into its next chapter, she said. He shook her hand, still oblivious to the deeper meaning of her words. But Simone didn't need him to understand. She had already claimed her victory. That evening, Simone sat alone in her new office at the Crestview, taking a rare moment for reflection. She had spent years breaking through glass ceilings, challenging assumptions, and redefining what success looked like. This was just one more victory in a line of many. But this one was different. This one was personal. Tomorrow she would walk into the hotel again, not as an unwelcome guest, but as its rightful owner. She would make sure that from now on, Crestview would not be a place that shut its doors on anyone based on appearance or background. It would be a place that welcomed all. Simone smiled to herself as she leaned back in her chair. This was only the beginning, a new beginning. The next morning, Simone stood in front of Crestview once again, but everything felt different. This time, she wasn't here to be turned away. She was here to shape the hotel's future. The towering building loomed above her, its polished facade reflecting the morning sun. It had been less than a month since she had walked away from this very spot, rejected by the hotel's so-called standards. But now the balance of power had shifted entirely. Renee stood beside her, a grin spreading across her face. Are you ready for this? Simone took a deep breath, adjusting her tailored jacket. I've never been more ready. Together, they stepped through the entrance, but this time there was no hesitation. The receptionist from their last visit, the one who had stumbled over her words while refusing Simone's reservation, was stationed behind the desk once again. As Simone and Renee stepped into the Crestview's lobby, the receptionist's face drained of color. A tense silence settled as the young woman recognized her, struggling to process what she was seeing. She quickly tried to recover, forcing a nervous smile. Good morning. Welcome to the Crestview. How may I assist you today? She stammered, her voice betraying a tremor. Simone approached the desk with quiet confidence, meeting the receptionist's gaze directly. I'm not here for a reservation, she said, her tone smooth and steady. I'm here as the new owner. The receptionist's face turned ghostly pale, her mouth slightly open as she struggled for words. She fumbled, her hands trembling as she tried to regain composure. I wasn't aware, she stammered, glancing around as if searching for help. Simone remained calm. I'm sure the rest of the staff will need to be informed, she replied, her voice cool and authoritative. I suggest you start preparing. Without waiting for a response, Simone turned and walked toward the elevators, Renee by her side. As they waited, Renee let out a barely contained laugh. Did you see her face? I think she'll need a new job after today. Simone smirked but kept her focus. She's just one part of a bigger picture, she said, pressing the button for the top floor. The real work starts now. The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside. Simone pressed the button for the top floor, where her new office awaited. As the elevator ascended, her mind was already racing through the changes she intended to implement. This wasn't merely a business acquisition, it was an opportunity to transform the Crestview from a symbol of exclusion into one of inclusion, to redefine the luxury experience and open it to all. When they reached the top floor, the elevator doors slid open, revealing a wide corridor with glass walls and minimalist decor. At the end of the hall was the corner office, now hers. Simone strode toward it with purpose, Renee following close behind. The view from inside the office was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city that had seen her rise from humble beginnings to the head of a real estate empire. The room itself was elegant and understated, with sleek furniture and tasteful artwork adorning the walls, a space designed for someone powerful. Now it belonged to her. Simone stood by the window, gazing out over the cityscape. This was more than just a personal victory. It was a statement to anyone who had doubted her or tried to keep her out of spaces she rightfully belonged in. Renee stepped beside her, her voice soft yet filled with pride. "You did it, Simone. You really did it." Simone's lips curled into a smile, though there was no finality in her expression. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly. "Now, it's time to make real changes." In the weeks that followed, Simone wasted no time implementing her vision. Her first step was a comprehensive overhaul of the Crestview's staff policies and guest services. She began by meeting with the hotel's management team, including the very people who had perpetuated the discriminatory practices she had encountered firsthand. One by one, they filed into the conference room, unsure of what to expect from the hotel's new owner. In the conference room, the Crestview staff sat assembled, their expressions shifting from confusion to worry. Among them was Derek Vaughn, the silver-haired manager who had personally turned Simone away weeks before. He sat at the table's head, unaware that the woman he had dismissed was now his boss. Simone entered the room with an air of quiet authority. She didn't need to raise her voice or demand attention. Her presence alone commanded it. She took her seat at the table's head, directly across from Vaughn, and surveyed the room. Nervous glances darted across the table, whispers exchanged, but no one dared to speak until she did. "Good morning," Simone began, her tone calm but resolute. "As some of you may know, the Crestview is now under new ownership. I am Simone Turner, and I will be overseeing all future operations of this hotel." A soft murmur of acknowledgement rippled across the table, though Vaughn's eyes remained fixed on her, a flicker of recognition sparking in his gaze. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair as the realization slowly dawned on him. "I've reviewed the current policies and practices here," Simone continued, her voice steady, "and there will be substantial changes moving forward. The Crestview may be a luxury establishment, but it will no longer be a place that discriminates against guests or staff based on race, gender, or background." Vaughn's mouth opened as if to object, but he quickly closed it when Simone's eyes met his, firm and unwavering. She allowed a moment of silence, letting the weight of her words sink in. "I expect every member of this team to uphold the values of inclusivity and respect," she said, her voice resolute. "We'll be retraining staff, implementing new policies, and ensuring that this hotel becomes a welcoming space for all guests, no exceptions." The room was silent, save for the soft shuffle of papers as a few staff members glanced at each other nervously. Vaughn eventually cleared his throat, mustering the courage to speak. "Miss Turner, with all due respect, the Crestview has always prided itself on maintaining a certain level of exclusivity." "Our clientele?" Simone raised a hand, cutting him off. Her expression was unyielding. "Exclusivity is not the same as discrimination, Mr. Vaughn. If you're concerned that the Crestview's reputation will suffer because we're welcoming a more diverse clientele, then you're welcome to seek employment elsewhere." Vaughn's face reddened, but he said nothing more. The rest of the management team sat in stunned silence, grappling with the profound shift in leadership. They had spent years catering to a narrow, exclusive definition of luxury that excluded those who didn't fit their preconceived notions of belonging. Now, that mindset was being challenged, and Simone made it clear there would be no room for resistance. In the weeks that followed, Simone's influence spread through every corner of the Crestview. She brought in diversity and inclusion experts to retrain the staff, ensuring that every guest, regardless of background, would be treated with respect and dignity. She also made it a priority to hire more people of color and women in leadership positions, breaking the unspoken standards that had long determined who could hold power in a hotel like this. As Simone brought new leadership and fresh ideas into the Crestview, she challenged the old unspoken rule that only a certain type of person could run a luxury hotel. Word spread quickly about the changes taking place under her direction. At first, there was some skepticism. A few longtime patrons worried the hotel's reputation might suffer under her leadership. But as Simone's vision took shape, it became clear that the Crestview wasn't losing prestige. It was gaining something far more valuable. Guests of all races and backgrounds began to fill the lobby, enjoying the same luxury experience that had once been reserved for only a select few. Simone watched from her office window as families, couples, and business travelers passed through the hotel's doors, each one greeted with warmth and professionalism. For Simone, this was more than proving a point. She was creating a place where everyone could feel that they belonged. Crestview was no longer a symbol of old-world exclusivity. It was a beacon of progress, a place where anyone could experience the height of luxury regardless of race or status. One afternoon, while Simone was reviewing final reports, Renee burst into her office, grinning widely. "You're not going to believe this," she said, holding out her phone. Simone raised an eyebrow as she took the phone and glanced at the screen. A bold, triumphant headline read, "Billionaire Simone Turner transforms historic hotel into beacon of inclusivity, the Crestview's new era." Simone smiled as she read the article, which detailed her takeover and the sweeping changes she had made. The piece praised her for turning the Crestview into a place that embraced diversity while maintaining its status as one of the city's top luxury hotels. She handed the phone back to Renee, a satisfied smile on her lips. "Nice to see the press finally catching up," she said with a touch of humor. Renee laughed. "You did it, Simone. You turned this place around." Simone stood and walked over to the window, looking out at the city she had come to love. "We did it," she corrected, "and this is just the beginning." With the Crestview now under her leadership, Simone knew this victory wasn't just personal. It was a step toward a future where no one would have to fight for a place at the table. She was determined to keep pushing forward, one victory at a time. Simone's transformation of the Crestview wasn't only a testament to her determination. It represented her vision for a world where access to opportunity wasn't limited by race, background, or appearance. As she continued refining her vision for the hotel, she realized that reshaping the physical space was just the start. The real challenge lay in changing minds, both within the hotel and beyond its polished facade. In the following months, Simone worked tirelessly to implement changes that went beyond policy adjustments. She reached out to local communities, forming partnerships with organizations dedicated to promoting diversity and inclusion within the hospitality industry. Her goal was not just to reshape the Crestview, but to set an example for luxury hotels everywhere. Simone sat in her office, reviewing a proposal from a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing training in hospitality management for underrepresented youth. She had been working closely with them to develop internships and mentorship programs at the Crestview, opening the door for young people from disadvantaged backgrounds to gain real-world experience in an industry that had historically overlooked them. A knock at the door broke her focus, and Renee stepped in, a stack of reports in her hands. "You've been in here all day," she said with a smile. "Thought you might need a break." Simone looked up, her eyes tired but determined. "I'm fine. Just trying to finalize this partnership. It's going to be a major step forward for us." Renee set the reports down on Simone's desk, then leaned against the edge of the chair. "You're doing something incredible, you know that? The Crestview isn't just a hotel anymore. It's becoming a symbol." Simone smiled, though a hint of weariness softened her expression. "That's the goal," she replied. "But symbols only matter if they inspire real change. I don't just want the Crestview to be a place where people from all backgrounds feel welcome. I want it to be a place where they can learn, grow, and thrive." Renee nodded, her admiration clear. "And you're doing just that. Look at all we've accomplished. The new staff, the partnerships with community organizations, the outreach programs. It's all coming together." Simone leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a moment to reflect. The changes she'd implemented were already bearing fruit. Guests from diverse backgrounds filled the Crestview, and the staff itself had become a mirror of the inclusive world she envisioned. But even as she took pride in what they'd built, she knew the work was far from complete. "We've come a long way," Simone said softly, "but there's still so much more to do. We need to make sure these changes aren't just surface level. I want this to be sustainable, something that lasts long after I'm gone." Renee's expression softened, and she looked at Simone with a mixture of admiration and encouragement. "You've already built something that will last, Simone. You've laid the foundation. Now it's about continuing to build on it." Simone nodded thoughtfully, her mind already racing forward. She had never been one for half measures. Every accomplishment was merely a stepping stone toward an even greater vision. She wasn't about to stop now. Later that week, Simone hosted a gathering in one of the hotel's grand ballrooms. It was the first major event since she'd taken over, and she had invited community leaders, activists, business owners, and members of the media to celebrate the hotel's new direction. The room buzzed with energy, filled with people from all walks of life, a sight that would have been unimaginable in the Crestview's past. As Simone stood at the front of the room, preparing to give her speech, she took a moment to scan the crowd. A palpable sense of excitement and curiosity hung in the air. People were eager to hear about the future of the Crestview under her leadership, and she felt a surge of pride at how far they had come. Clearing her throat, she smiled warmly and began. "Good evening, everyone. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. This is a special occasion. This is a significant moment for me and for the Crestview," Simone began, her voice carrying across the ballroom, where a crowd of community leaders, activists, and supporters watched her intently. "As many of you know, this hotel has a long and storied history. For years, it was a symbol of exclusivity, of privilege accessible only to a select few. But tonight, we mark the beginning of a new chapter." The room fell silent, the weight of her words resonating deeply. Simone took a moment to let the silence settle before continuing. "When I took over the Crestview," she said, "I knew I wasn't just buying a hotel. I was inheriting a legacy, one that needed change. It wasn't enough for me to succeed in a space that had, for so long, excluded people like me. I wanted to transform it into a place where anyone, no matter their background, could experience the same level of luxury and respect." Nods of agreement rippled through the crowd. Encouraged, Simone continued, her voice steady and full of conviction. "But change doesn't happen overnight," she went on. "It requires dedication, vision, and, most importantly, action. That's why, tonight, I'm proud to announce the launch of the Crestview Community Inclusion Initiative." A murmur of excitement filled the room. "Through this program," Simone explained, "we will be partnering with local organizations to provide training, internships, and career opportunities in hospitality for underrepresented individuals. We're not just opening our doors, we're building bridges." The crowd burst into applause, and Simone smiled, feeling the energy shift in the room. She had always believed that true change came from empowering others, and tonight she was putting that belief into action. "Our goal is to ensure that the Crestview is not only a place of luxury, but a place of opportunity. A place where anyone, regardless of where they come from, can build a career, a future, and a life," she said. "This is only the beginning of what we're going to accomplish." As applause filled the ballroom, Simone felt a surge of pride. This was what she had been working toward, not just the acquisition of a hotel, but the creation of a new legacy rooted in inclusivity, empowerment, and progress. In the weeks following the event, the Crestview Community Inclusion Initiative gained momentum. Applications for the internship program poured in, and Simone's team worked closely with local schools and community organizations to identify talented candidates who had been overlooked by traditional hiring practices. Simone herself took an active role in mentoring some of the interns, eager to share her knowledge and experience with the next generation of leaders. One intern in particular caught her attention, a young man named Terrence. Raised in one of the city's tougher neighborhoods, Terrence had faced numerous challenges but had managed to put himself through college. He dreamed of working in hotel management and had a clear passion for the industry, though he had struggled to find opportunities that would allow him to break into the field. Simone arranged to meet with Terrence personally, impressed by his determination and drive. "You remind me of myself," she told him during their meeting, admiring his resilience. "When I was starting out," Simone told Terrence during one of their mentorship meetings, "I had to fight for every opportunity that came my way. But you have real talent, Terrence. Now it's about making sure the right doors open for you. Terrence's eyes lit up with gratitude. I can't thank you enough for this chance, Miss Turner. No one's ever given me an opportunity like this before. Simone smiled warmly. You earned it, Terrence. Now it's up to you to make the most of it. And remember, you're not alone. I'll be here to help guide you every step of the way. As the months passed, Simone's transformation of the Crestview became the talk of the luxury hotel industry. Other high-end hotels began taking notice of her success, with a few even reaching out to Simone for guidance on implementing similar initiatives. The hotel's guest list grew steadily, now attracting not only high-profile clients, but also travelers drawn to its new message of inclusivity and empowerment. Though Simone had achieved remarkable success with the Crestview, she began to realize that her journey as the owner of the hotel was far from over. The rebranding, community initiatives, and mentorship programs were just the start. Beneath the Crestview's gleaming facade and luxurious interiors lay a complex and troubling history that Simone could no longer ignore. One afternoon, as she sat in her office reviewing plans for upcoming events, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Renee, her personal assistant, who had been working on organizing legal and historical documents related to the hotel's transition. Hey, Simone. Renee's voice sounded serious, almost hesitant. Do you have a minute? There's something I think you should see. Simone's curiosity was piqued. Of course, what's up? I've been digging into the Crestview's past for the archival review we're doing as part of the rebranding campaign, Renee explained, and I came across something unsettling. I think it's best if you take a look yourself. I'll send it over to your email now. Moments later, Simone's computer pinged with a notification. She clicked the file open and began reading through the first few pages. As she skimmed, her chest tightened. The Crestview's history was even darker than she had anticipated. Originally opened in the early 1900s, the Crestview had long been a symbol of exclusivity and opulence. But as Simone read further into the historical records, she uncovered details that shook her. The hotel had a troubling past, steeped in segregation and exclusionary practices. It hadn't just denied access to black guests for decades. It had been a prominent site for high society gatherings where discriminatory policies were openly upheld. In its early days, the Crestview had served as a bastion of white privilege, enforcing strict rules that barred people of color from even entering its doors. Simone felt a cold knot form in her stomach as she continued reading. The more she uncovered, the more personal this felt. This was no longer just about owning a hotel. It was about addressing a legacy of exclusion that reached far beyond her own experiences. As Simone read through the document, a deep sense of reckoning settled over her. She had thought transforming the Crestview was about her personal experience, the night she was denied a room. But the truth went far deeper. She closed the document and looked out of her office window, feeling the weight of the hotel's history pressing down on her. The changes she had made so far suddenly seemed surface level compared to the legacy of exclusion that the Crestview had carried for decades. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Renee entered, her face with concern. I take it you read the file? Simone nodded slowly. Yes, I had no idea it was this bad. Renee sat down across from her. Neither did I. We knew there were issues with exclusivity, but the segregation policies they enforced, it's worse than I'd imagined. What do you want to do? Simone took a deep breath, her mind racing with possible responses. She could ignore the history and focus solely on the future. But that didn't sit right with her. Transforming the Crestview wouldn't be complete unless she confronted its past head-on. I don't want to gloss over this, she said firmly. We can't sweep this under the rug. If the Crestview is truly going to be a place of inclusivity and change, we have to acknowledge the full extent of its history, even the ugly parts. Renee nodded, understanding her resolve. So, what are you thinking? Simone rose from her chair and began pacing, her mind moving faster now. We need to make this public. I'm thinking of hosting a formal event, a symposium, where we openly address the hotel's history and bring in voices from the community. We need to talk about what the Crestview once represented and, more importantly, how we can move forward. Changing policies isn't enough. People need to understand why these changes are necessary. A spark of admiration appeared in Renee's eyes. You really don't back down from anything, do you? Simone paused and looked at her friend. I've had to fight my whole life to get to where I am. Fear or discomfort won't stop me now. If we're going to build something new, we have to reckon with the past first. In the days that followed, Simone dove into planning what she called the Crestview Legacy Symposium, an event designed to confront the hotel's racist past and celebrate the strides toward a more inclusive future. She reached out to historians, activists, and local leaders, inviting them to speak on panels about the history of segregation in the hospitality industry and the ways it still resonated in society today. Simone also made sure to include voices from the younger generation, people like Terrence, who had risen through the hotel's ranks, and others who represented the change she envisioned for the industry. The announcement of the symposium stirred significant reactions in the media. Some praised Simone for her bold choice to confront the hotel's past openly, while others criticized her for reopening old wounds. But Simone wasn't surprised by the backlash. She knew change was never easy, and there would always be those who resisted it. Still, she was certain this was the right path forward. The day of the symposium arrived, and the Crestview's Grand Ballroom was filled with a diverse crowd. The Crestview's Grand Ballroom was filled to capacity with attendees, hotel patrons, community leaders, activists, historians, and journalists. It was a vibrant, diverse gathering, and Simone could feel the anticipation in the air. Standing at the podium, she took in the sea of faces before her. For a moment, the weight of the occasion hit her. She was addressing a room full of people from all backgrounds in a place that had once symbolized exclusion. This contrast with the hotel's past filled her with pride at how far they had come. Good evening, everyone. Simone began, her voice steady and powerful. Thank you for joining us today. We are here to have a conversation that's long overdue. Like many institutions in this country, the Crestview has a complicated history. For too long, this hotel stood as a symbol of exclusion, priding itself on keeping certain people out. It upheld policies that weren't just discriminatory, they were actively harmful. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Simone continued, her gaze moving across the audience. When I took over the Crestview, I knew I was inheriting more than just a business. I was inheriting a legacy, and I promised myself I wouldn't shy away from the truth, no matter how difficult it might be to confront. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Tonight, we're going to confront that truth together. We're here to acknowledge the painful history of this hotel, but we're also here to talk about how we can move forward. The changes we've made at the Crestview aren't just about luxury or business, they're about justice, inclusion, and progress. The room fell silent as Simone's words resonated with the audience, the gravity of her message settling over them. We can't undo the past, Simone continued, her voice filled with resolve, but we can learn from it. And we can ensure that the future we're building is one where everyone has a place at the table. That's what tonight is all about. The audience broke into applause as Simone concluded her speech. She stepped down from the podium, feeling the crowd's support and energy washing over her. This was the beginning of something far larger than herself, larger than the hotel. The Crestview was evolving into a symbol of change, not just within the hospitality industry, but in society as a whole. The symposium proved to be a resounding success, with panel discussions that ranged from the history of segregation in hotels to the importance of diversity in leadership roles. Attendees shared personal stories about the impacts of exclusion and how it had shaped their lives. One panel featured Terrence, the intern who had captured Simone's attention with his drive and ambition. During his discussion, Terrence opened up about his journey. I never thought I'd get a chance like this, he admitted. People like me don't usually get to work in places like the Crestview. But Miss Turner saw something in me that no one else did. She gave me a chance, and now I'm here because someone believed in me. The crowd responded with a standing ovation, and Simone watched with pride as Terrence stood tall, his confidence evident. This moment captured exactly what she had hoped to achieve, a place where people could rise based on potential, not prejudice. After the successful symposium, Simone walked through the ballroom, receiving heartfelt congratulations from guests and speakers alike. As she neared the entrance, she spotted Renee, who was beaming with pride. "That was incredible, Simone," Renee said, her voice filled with admiration. "You've officially transformed this place." Simone smiled, though a thoughtful expression crossed her face. "We've made a lot of progress," she agreed, "but the work isn't finished yet. There's still so much more to do." Renee chuckled. "Of course there is, but for now, take a moment to celebrate this victory. You've earned it." Simone nodded, allowing herself a brief, rare moment of satisfaction. The Crestview had once represented everything she had fought against: discrimination, exclusion, and prejudice. But now, under her leadership, it was becoming a beacon of hope. It was a place where anyone could walk through the doors and know they belonged. Yet Simone knew that the fight for change was ongoing. New challenges and obstacles would always lie ahead. But she was ready for them, because for Simone, every step forward was a victory. And she was only just beginning. Months passed since the Crestview Legacy Symposium, and Simone's transformation of the hotel had evolved into something much larger than even she had anticipated. The Crestview was no longer just a luxury destination. It had become a symbol of progress and equality. Inclusivity, opportunity, and respect were now woven into the fabric of the hotel's identity, right alongside its five-star service. Guests from around the world visited, drawn not only to its elegance, but also to what it represented, a breaking of the chains that had once bound it to a history of exclusion. But as the initial excitement of the Crestview's success began to settle, Simone realized she couldn't rest. There was something deeper, a mission that had taken root in her heart. She felt a responsibility to ensure that what she had built would endure far beyond her leadership and expand beyond the walls of this single hotel. She wanted to create a legacy that couldn't be undone by shifts in ownership or the changing tides of society. One afternoon, Simone sat in her office as the late sun cast long shadows across the polished floors. Papers were scattered across her desk, plans for new projects, letters from community leaders, and proposals for future expansions of the Crestview brand. Yet, it wasn't the financial success or potential growth that weighed on her mind. It was the people, the lives she had touched, the doors she had opened, and the future generations who would benefit from the paths she was creating. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Terrence stepped in, his expression a mix of excitement and nervous energy. Since the symposium, he had risen quickly through the hotel's ranks, proving himself to be not only a capable manager, but a visionary leader in his own right. "Simone," he began, hesitating as if unsure of how to proceed. "I know you're busy, but there's something I'd like to discuss." Simone waved him in with a warm smile. "Of course, Terrence, you've earned a seat at this table. What's on your mind?" Terrence settled into the chair across from Simone, his hands resting on the armrests, though his fingers fidgeted slightly. "I've been thinking a lot about everything we've accomplished here," he began. "The changes we've made, the opportunities we've created for people who would have never had a chance in a place like this before. It's been incredible. But I can't shake the feeling that we could be doing more." Simone leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "I agree. What are you thinking?" Terrence's eyes lit up, and his initial nervousness faded as his excitement took over. "I've been thinking about expanding what we're doing, not just here at the Crestview, but across the entire hospitality industry. There are so many luxury hotels, resorts, and boutique properties out there that still cling to outdated practices. They cater to an elite few and exclude anyone who doesn't fit their narrow idea of what a guest should be." Simone nodded, already catching on to his vision. "You're talking about creating a network, a collection of properties that operate with the same values we've established here." "Exactly," Terrence replied, his enthusiasm building. "We could take what we've done here and replicate it across the country, maybe even internationally. We could create a new standard for luxury hospitality, one that doesn't just add diversity as a checkbox, but makes it the heart of the experience. Everything from the staff we hire to the guests we welcome and even the communities we partner with would reflect our values." Simone's heart swelled with pride. She had recognized Terrence's potential early on, and here he was, not only fulfilling it, but pushing beyond. You're thinking big, Terrence. I like that. But this kind of expansion won't be easy. We'll be up against decades, centuries even, of entrenched traditions and mindsets. I know, Terrence admitted, but if anyone can do it, it's you. You've already shown that change is possible, and we've proved it together. Simone leaned back in her chair, taking a moment to consider the possibilities. Terrence was right. The work they had done at the Crestview was only the beginning. There were countless other hotels and resorts where similar barriers still existed, where exclusivity was part of the unspoken policy. If they could bring what they'd accomplished at the Crestview to these properties, they could spark a global movement that would redefine the meaning of luxury. You're right, she said finally, locking eyes with Terrence. We can't stop here. If we want to make real lasting change, we have to take this further. Terrence grinned, a determined look in his eyes. So what's the next step? Simone rose from her chair and moved toward the large windows overlooking the city. The sun was beginning to set, casting the skyline in a warm golden glow. She had come a long way, from being turned away at this very hotel, to owning it, transforming it, and now envisioning something even greater. We start by building a team, Simone said, turning back to face Terrence. We'll need experts in every area: hospitality, community engagement, finance, and more. Once we have the right team in place, hospitality experts, community advocates, finance and legal specialists, all passionate about this mission, we'll begin identifying properties that align with our vision, Simone explained. Hotels that are struggling, underperforming, or simply stuck in the past. Terrence nodded, taking notes as Simone outlined the plan. We'll give them a chance to be part of something bigger, she continued. We'll invest in them, transform them, just as we've transformed the Crestview. In return, they'll adopt our principles of inclusivity, diversity, and community engagement. Together, we'll build a new kind of hotel chain, one that sets a 21st century standard for luxury. As Simone spoke, the vision crystallized in her mind. This wasn't merely about hospitality. It was about creating spaces where everyone felt welcome, where no one was judged by the color of their skin, background, or wealth. It was about reshaping an industry that had long been defined by exclusivity and exclusion. Terrence stood, his excitement barely contained. I'll start reaching out to potential team members right away. This is going to be huge, Simone. I can feel it. Simone smiled, feeling that familiar spark of inspiration ignite within her once again. I know it will be, Terrence. We're not just building a business, we're building a legacy. The next few months became a whirlwind of activity as Simone and Terrence worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life. They assembled a team of passionate, skilled professionals who not only excelled in their fields but also believed deeply in the mission. Each team member had faced barriers themselves, understood what it meant to be excluded, and was dedicated to creating spaces of opportunity for others. Together, they began identifying luxury properties that held potential but were hindered by outdated business models and exclusionary practices. One by one, Simone and her team approached these properties, offering them a partnership that would not only revitalize their business, but also transform their culture. Simone personally oversaw every negotiation, ensuring that each hotel in their network fully embraced the principles she had established. Slowly but surely, the network of inclusive luxury hotels began to grow. The Crestview was no longer a single shining example, it was the first of many. A year later, Simone stood at the grand opening of a new property, a luxury resort on the Caribbean coast that had recently joined their network. This resort, once known for its exclusivity and members-only policies, had undergone a complete transformation under Simone's leadership. Now, it was a thriving destination where guests from all walks of life could experience the beauty and luxury of the Caribbean without fear of exclusion or judgment. As she strolled through the resort's lush gardens, Simone reflected on how far they had come, from the moment she was turned away at the Crestview's front desk to now overseeing a growing network of inclusive luxury properties. The moment felt surreal, but as always, Simone's mind was already focused on the future. There were still more properties to transform, more lives to touch, more barriers to break down. Later that evening, as the sun set over the sparkling ocean, Terrence joined Simone on the terrace. They stood in silence for a while, watching the waves gently lap against the shore. "I never imagined we'd come this far," Terence said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "It's incredible, Simone." Simone smiled softly, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "We're just getting started, Terence. There's still so much more to do." Terence chuckled, shaking his head. "You never stop, do you?" Simone shook her head with a quiet determination. "I can't afford to. Every time I think we've made enough progress, I remember there's always someone out there who still needs a door opened for them. We've built something incredible, but now we have to make sure it lasts. We're not just building hotels, we're building a movement." Terence nodded, fully understanding the weight of her words. "And we'll keep going, together." Simone glanced over at him, her eyes filled with pride and gratitude. "Together," she echoed, the shared commitment evident between them. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Simone felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had built something that would outlive her. A legacy that would continue to open doors for generations to come. For Simone Turner, that was the greatest victory of all.